It's my pleasure to introduce Gill Greer, a CE, an author, and probably more well known internationally than she is within New Zealand. How many of you have or have a family member that's been involved in VSA? Quite a few. So Gill has the privilege of being the CE of Volunteer Services Abroad, a unique New Zealand institution which you'll talk to us about, particularly as it's active in the Pacific and it's linked to our Project Hope. She was shortlisted in 2015 for the Fairfax 100 New Zealand Women of Influence Award, and she was formerly Assistant Vice-Chancellor of Victoria University and Director General of the International Planned Parenthood Federation, which was a London-based organisation and international NGO specialising in sexual and reproductive health in 150 countries. And prior to that, she was New Zealand's CE of Family Planning. She's been a frequent speaker at the UN, and she is the US not-for-profit Women Care Global, which provides services to women, particularly in the US. She's also on the advisory committee for the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade, and in another life she was a freelance broadcaster and a writer, and has written books on Catherine Mansfield and Robin Hyde. And she was awarded an MBA at the conclusion of her term at the International Federation of Planned Parenthood. So I give you Gill Greer.
Kia ora tātou, and thank you so very much indeed for inviting me to join you today. It's a real pleasure to hear so much too about Rotary and about the synergy between what you're engaged on internationally and in the region and what we do in volunteer service abroad. I've called this presentation Positive Actions in a Volatile World. Some of you may have been present, in fact I know a couple of you were, when I did a conversation with Helen Clark on Thursday, a public conversation which is on our website. And the title came really from a post that Helen sent to friends and family at the beginning of the year. We live in volatile times, but if enough of us takes more positive actions together, we can make a difference, if only there are enough of us. And for us in volunteering, as for you in your work as Rotarians, this is critically important. Talking to her the other day, she also mentioned, I think something you would agree with, given the huge amount of voluntary engagement you have, that volunteers are catalysts, and volunteers provide the glue that holds communities together. And once at the UN, I was given 5 minutes to talk about volunteering at home and abroad, and my question was, can you imagine a world without volunteers? Can you imagine this country without volunteers? We wouldn't even get out of bed on a Saturday morning. We already have a relationship in VSA with Rotary International, which some of you will be aware of, connection with Stuart Batty and a commitment to do a water project that you're involved in Fiji. It's been delayed because the current Prime Minister is unwilling to give VSA a memorandum of understanding similar to the one that we had previously when we sent some 300 volunteers to Fiji. So of course today we live in an interconnected world, and a world not connected, regrettably, by peace and justice and human dignity, but instead by discord, disruption, disorder and denial of human rights. It's an unequal world, a reminder there that the world's 8 richest men own the same amount of wealth as the poorest 3.6 billion. A reminder of how little GDP comparatively women earn. And a world in which too often in New Zealand, I think, particularly when we go out to say New Zealanders, would you support VSA? They say, great organisation, really trust it, a New Zealand icon. Why would we trust you? You work in the Pacific. You don't work any longer in Africa or Asia. The Pacific's where we go for holidays. People forget that 4 hours from Auckland, you have one country that is 157th, 156th now on the Human Development Index, another 154th. And we here at home, as you know, are 13th, though until a couple of years ago we were 7th. It's not surprising, given all of that both President Obama and Ban Ki-moon said basically the same unforgettable words. Our generation, I exclude the newest members today probably, our generation is the first with the power to end poverty. It is the last with the chance to prevent climate change. And so your talk and your international president's talk about sustainability is absolutely at the very heart and centre of what we do. So what do? We do focus on the Pacific, and it is hugely vulnerable. Hundreds of thousands of children out of school, highest rates of violence against women in the world, but the lowest rates of representation in Parliament. Yes, opportunities, a new trade deal. We don't know what it will look like, of course. We've talked of young people and your commitment to young people. In the countries where we work, 66% of the population is under 25. Most of them without training, most of them without aspiration. That is our future. That's the future of our region. Elections, civil unrest, you can see what's happening in PNG, Bougainville too, at the moment as we speak, a concern to us, of course, for our many volunteers there. And a reminder that New Zealand is a generous and rights-based donor, an unusual donor in that it says to other countries, what would you like and how would you like to do it? Not, this is our money, and if you do this, you'll get it. And Rotary works, of course, in the same way as we do. Projects that are initiated by partners, delivered in partnership. So, that small budget of New Zealand's could go entirely on climate change, disaster risk reduction, build back better after Cyclone Pam, other examples like that, of course. We no longer have a cyclone season. I'm on duty 24 hours a day, together with my management team. We've had 6 cyclones in the last 2 months. Some of them small, some particularly erratic. And we say to our partner organisations, and I think this is really important, because volunteering is competitive, like any other organisational business, what makes New Zealand volunteers different? And it won't surprise you to hear it. They have humility. Not a word you might choose, but it's that laid-back attitude. They work hard. They listen. They ask us what we want to do. They don't tell us what to do. They are problem solvers, and the list goes on. And I'm very proud to be involved in that. So there we have that list of changes and challenges for the Pacific. And how are we going to solve it? Through the Sustainable Development Goals. And I was one of a group of 40 organisations that ensured that volunteering is included in the Sustainable Development Goals. And we would love to see Rotary in that movement as well. Because you cannot achieve the vision, which is an ambitious one, a vision about a world by 2030 where no one is left behind. They are also universal. Unlike their predecessors, they apply here in New Zealand, in Porirua, in Kaikohe, on the East Cape, just as they do in Addis Ababa. And you'll see that very last one, partnerships, something that is at the centre of your work as it is at the centre of ours. So, if Sir Ed were around today, what would he say? He was our founding president, and what he said at the time was, through partnerships, great things can be achieved. And he also said, very similar to you, if you have more and others have less, then you need to do something about it. And that remains at the centre of our work today. So our partners are in-country partners, several hundred of them. We send a couple of hundred volunteers across the Pacific every year, equal to 124 years of service in just 1 year. Short assignments, long assignments, what do? IT, human resources, marketing, farming, fishing, urban development, hip-hop dancing, I have to tell you, jewellery making, policy and law. You name it, we find them. We're so fortunate that New Zealanders tend to still be hugely committed. The demand goes up, and so do the number of people who apply. We have partnerships with New Zealand corporates, particularly Downer, GHD, a number of others on the way, but held up for over a year by the new health and safety in the workplace legislation. So my risk, with 200 volunteers, Kiwis across the Pacific, I said to the lawyers, not in this room, but one of them is that gave us some other very helpful advice. What would it cost me if I spent more on the floor of the carpet of our new building than I am on making sure that our volunteers are safe because they are working with a weak partner organisation? The lawyer said, not much. I said, how much is not much? Oh, 250,000. I said, that's much. So that's a further imperative to us to make sure that we look after those volunteers and look after them well. But in doing that, we are also teaching partner organisations that have no emergency plan, in spite of cyclones, in spite of earthquakes. No plan. nowhere to go. What happens to the elderly, to the babies? What happens to food? How do people escape when the big wave hits? They have no plans. They are not ready. They are not resilient. We have partners with NGOs, World Vision, Save the Children. They have a project. We find a volunteer, place it in. We have regional partners, UNDP, UNFPA, UN Women, a range of them, SPC, universities across the Pacific as well. And our most important partner is, of course, our funder, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. So what do we do? Around about, as I said, a couple of hundred assignments a year. So going back 5 years when I began, and I'm about to leave next month, we did 150 assignments a year. Now it's over 200, and the variety of assignments and of volunteers has changed dramatically. But ultimately, they all have the same end, the same goal, to build capacity, and yes, like you, to build sustainability. So as one partner said to me, Tony was a Kiwi, but we forgot about that. He became one of us, he taught us everything he knew, and our lives have changed forever. That to me is an extraordinary thing, and I debrief every single one of them, and I'm so proud to do it. And there are a few in this room who are return volunteers. So just to say very quickly there, sometimes they'll go for a month, sometimes for a year, and anywhere in between. Some have volunteered 10 times. Today, sometimes it's e-volunteering. 10 days in country, work on a very specific project, do it online, go back again. Is it fixed? Is it okay? What next? We also have hub and spokes. One volunteer doing something like 0. Why spend 6 months with one organisation? Visit 4, one after the other. Go around again, bring them all together, and you have a community of good practice. Downer is an example of a partnership. We have sent 14 now, young Downer engineers, to Honiara to work with the Ministry of Education and Human Resources. The last 2 oversaw the building of 20 school libraries. And I really need to cut the bottom off the photograph because clearly it's a health and safety risk. But I love the photo so much. Why did Downer do it? Recruitment, retention, building leadership. It beats paintballing any day of the week. Those young volunteers of theirs come back absolutely marked for leadership in their organisation. They are ambassadors for New Zealand, ambassadors for the Pacific, ambassadors for Downer, and ambassadors for a better world. And they are truly extraordinary. And Downer won the Innovation Award for graduate employment. What have we done well? Like you, the struggle is, how do you measure impact? I can count the numbers. That's easy. What difference do we make? That's the hard piece, and that's a piece we're working on with the UN and with Johns Hopkins, Peace Corps, and others as well. But our partners tell us that, in fact, BSA fulfills the agenda that they ask for, not our own. They don't demand from the organisation, but they give. And those relationships go on and on and on, long after the volunteers left. And I said to the head of asset management from Honiara's Ministry of Education and Human Resources, what's the advice you would give to new volunteers? He said, just be New Zealanders. That's the reputation we have, and they are the face of New Zealand. So going forward, what will the future look like for those young Pacific people? How will we, in Gordon Brown's words, do development differently? The old silos have to go. I might have been seen as tree-hugging lefty, other people might have been seen as capitalist business owners. That's all gone. It has to go. Those binary divides have to go. Unless governments at home and abroad, governments, the private sector, civil society, work together, we don't have a chance. My grandchildren do not have a future unless we can do that. Organisations like mine, we have no right of entitlement just because we're the oldest. You're 96, we're 55. We have to be relevant, we have to be responsive, and if we're not, then we shouldn't be there, because it's not about us, we're the means to the end. And just to give one very quick example, the Millennium Caves in Vanuatu. Local people owned the land for years, government wanted to cut down the trees. The trees are disappearing so rapidly across the Pacific, as you will know. First volunteer came from Doc. He looked at their marvellous network of river, caves, said, somebody's going to die here, you need to fix this. Second volunteer, help the local people build the signs, build the ladders, build the roads, build the paths. The third did the business case. The fourth did the marketing plan and said, the cruise ships are sailing into Champagne Beach, you're not getting any of them, you need to do something about it. In 4 years, after 4 volunteers, that community has built 2 preschools, 2 primary schools. Those children no longer have to travel for hours to and from school. They can fund the teachers, the girls go to school, which they don't through most of Vanuatu. What a story. What a story, New Zealand commitment. What a difference they have made. I've mentioned most of those challenges already in passing. And of course, for us, it's always about making more difference, as it is for you. More assignments, more volunteers, more places. How can we make a change so that in the end, there is no one left behind by 2030? So that's a little bit about what we do and why we do it. And I know that some of you have been volunteers with us, as well as in Rotary and elsewhere. We would love to hear from you. You can be a volunteer anywhere between the ages of 22 and 77, so very few people are safe. When I'm around, I'm after them all. The age of the average volunteer has dropped, and they represent, without a doubt, the possibility of a better world. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Gillian's offered to take questions if people have got questions, and we've got a bit of time. Have we got some questions here? John.
Gillian, BSA was started on a prototype of BSO, the UK system started by Prime Minister Dixon, and his vision was school leavers. And I was involved in the prototype for BSA in 1962 when 4 school leavers taught in Vanuatu schools for a year. And we were much cheaper than the volunteers that you have now. And we probably weren't quite as efficient, but the school I was in had 14 periods a day, and I usually taught at least 10 of them at intermediate level. But now you won't take people under 22, which seems such a pity when there are dozens of school leavers who would like to have a year off before they go to university. And I wonder whether the organisation is thinking of bringing back that sort of program. I'm not saying it should be instead of what we're doing now, but it can be as well as.
Thank you very much indeed. You're quite right. Archbishop Moxon, who was a volunteer as a school leaver in Fiji, said, I don't think Fiji got a thing from me, but it changed my life. And you're quite right. Our board decided, I think about 10 years ago, not to continue with school leaver programs because, and in fact you see VSO and others sending large numbers to the Honduras, to the point that Honduras have said, stop, we've got enough unemployed youth of our own, thank you very much. But that said, we absolutely do. So currently we have a small Univol program. It's around 12, 15 a year. They're brilliant, absolutely stunning. They are graduates from Auckland, Massey, Otago, and Victoria, of course, who have done development degrees, political science degrees, very practical. They go for up to 10 months. We'd like to expand that program. We've just got somebody finishing his PhD, so he was a Univol. We're interested in the findings. It's been reviewed before. We're also exploring the whole idea of how do we engage young people to work with young people across the Pacific in ways that are meaningful. I spoke to a young woman recently. She had been away with Project Abroad from Australia, so that's voluntourism, if you like. I said, what did you do? She said, I painted the wall of a school in Nepal and I played with the kids. I said, how did you feel? She said, I felt disappointed. I said, what in? She said, myself. I said, it's not about you. So how do we make sure that it's meaningful for the volunteer and for their partner organisation where they're going to work? How do we make sure it's affordable? We're working on a couple of projects which we've run past MFAT and we'll put another one to them, and otherwise we'll look to try to fund it separately because I think young people working with young people can absolutely transform the world. We've just got to find a way. And to be honest, the focus groups I've run so far suggest young people are not interested in the Pacific. So we need to probably get ourselves back into Asia again to do it well. So it was a long answer, but I care passionately about it. There should have been an 18th goal. for young people. Instead, they have to be included in everything.
I'm sorry, it was a long question, and we'll have an opportunity afterwards, Robert, perhaps one-on-one. Can I call on Lynn to come and thank Gillian?
Thank you. Gill is a special person, and I've worked off and on with Gill for quite a while, actually. But the thing about Gill is she cares passionately about what she does, and you can see that and hear that in her voice. And VSA has been probably a natural progression for you, from family planning and all that that involves, particularly when you think about Trump and his views of that, to VSA. So Gill, we thank you and we wish you well. She does finish with VSA in August, but who knows what tomorrow brings.